Welcome back to Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. I'm not actually going to be showing the save screen because the chapter title here is a little bit of a spoiler. Last time, we finished things up at Serenes Forest and did a great service to Benyon, and now we're about to see the aftermath of that. It's a big step forward for everyone. And finally, we now officially have help. Of course he hasn't. We're probably gonna need an army to fight Dayan and get Crimea back. But Alincia's finally found someone to help her. Yeah, it's a shame that all of the people who wanted better Bjork-Lagu's relations tended to get assassinated. And by suggestions, please tell me you mean firing all of them? Because I'm pretty sure that's the only way to make sure they're not going to continue to do this. For now, though, we shouldn't worry about Benyon's issues. We should just focus on Crimea and Dayan. I like this line, though. Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, weird political stuff means that Ike has to be given a title here. Otherwise, yeah, it'd be a scandal, so... Reluctantly, Ike must accept the mantle of Lord. Yeah, this is kind of a big plot point, is that Ike really does not want anything to do with the nobility, and it's actually a big part of why an Ike and Alincia pairing wouldn't work. So, plot-based Lord promotion time. His speed should be so much higher than that. And Ike doesn't get any new weapons out of that. What he does get, though, is a new portrait. That's actually a thing for all plot-based promotions in the Telia series. They all completely change the character's portrait, so you'll be seeing a lot more of this in Radiant Dawn. Ike's Lord outfit doesn't get a lot of attention in spin-offs, though. You usually see his main Path of Radiance outfit, his main Radiant Dawn outfit, or his promoted Radiant Dawn outfit. This one... yeah, it's just, you don't see it that often. It looks kind of cool, I guess, but... I mean, I feel like surely one of Ike's Smash Brothers outfits should have referenced that, but anyway. Western Benyon is home to a great forest. At one time, these woods were home to the kingdom of Serenes and ruled by the Heron clan of the bird tribes. Doesn't seem to get an official coat of arms, though. Following the Serenes massacre, the forest lost its colour and vitality. Some said it was the sorrow of the goddess made real. For 20 long years, the devout citizens of Benyon trembled in shame and loathing over the crime they had committed. The Benyon Empress, Apostle Sanaki, stepped forward as representative of her countrymen. Kneeling before the surviving Heron prince and princess, she gave voice to the apology of her people. She spoke not as one nation to another, but as neighbours on the same continents. The massacre was unforgivable. However, hatred breeds hatred, and if the cycle of grief and anger is not broken, it will continue for time without end. It was with this in mind that the Herons accepted the Apostle's apology. And so it was that Serenes Forest was returned to its former glory. Basically just recapping what happened in the last chapter. Feels kind of weird since it was only one chapter ago. Afterward, as payment for Ike's service, Princess Elincia gained the services of a regiment of Benyon army regulars. Though of common birth, Ike receives peerage from the princess, and is given command of the army. As the first snow of the season falls, the newly commissioned General Ike takes control of the Crimean Liberation Army. He leads it towards the knife-edged mountains that mark the border between Benyon and Dayan. And here we go, it's time to actually confront Dayan at last. Now we finally get to see Ashnod again. And still mention of the spy amongst us. I wonder if you've figured out who it is by now. Why is it that villains always say a line like this? The moment that you call a group a tattered band of ragtag mercenaries who are no threat to you, they're gonna beat you horribly. That's a feature of most Fire Emblem protagonists. We're starting to gain more and more allies. More mention of this medallion. I like the way they animate snow in the dialogue scenes in this game. Yeah, the ones back in Chapter 17 were kind of a joke. Believe me, I've fought the ones in FE6. Those ones are definitely true Wyvern Riders. Remember this for later, though. In this game, both Benyon and Dayan are known for regiments of Wyvern Riders. Usually it's just one country that is in a Fire Emblem game, but here there's actually two, and a lot of Dayans used to be from Benyon. Again, this will be significant later. Fighting flyers with flyers, I guess. It also helps that Tanith comes with a weapon that's effective against other flyers, so she does pretty well at the anti-air job. Personally, I prefer the, grounds? I'm actually a little disappointed that, Falco's Final Smash is now different in the new Smash game. They've sort of made all of the Final Smashes cutscenes now, rather than actually interactive, but oh well. Now, drumroll please, who gets MVP? It was obviously going to be Jill due to what she did in the last part. But I think we did pretty well on the last one. So it's time for the base, and you know what? I think, what I'll do first? I think I'll actually go to... I'll go to outfit first, because we're all running very low on weapons after that last chapter, so let's see. I kind of want a better sword on Ike, but that's fine. Yeah, you want more speed on Ike than 15 at this point. That was right. He's had the Archer Band this whole time. Okay, I hope just as Jill's Strength Curse got reversed, Ike's Speed Curse gets reversed soon. Anyway, Soren could probably do with some more tomes. Wait, 5. How much strength do you have? 4. Losing 1 speed isn't the end of the world at this point, so I think that's okay. Nephany, let's see. Forgot I had an extra Killer Lance. Let's go ahead and take that, actually. Stefan, you could use more swords. Let's take that, I guess. Jill could definitely use more weapons. But you are only in an E and axes, I have to remember. Any good lances you can use? Not really. Titania could use a new steel axe, although a lot of these... I should probably just sell all of those, because they're not really going to help me all that much. Might as well take that short axe. And I don't think I'll be needing that hammer. Does anyone here have... Might as well take this, actually. Mist, I think, is fine on staves for now. Gatetree could use a better javelin. But other than that, I think he's okay. And yeah, everyone who had a bunch of stocked up weapons that I didn't bring to the last chapter, I can probably afford to get rid of now. Into the convoy, I mean. And you might notice that Tanith actually is not on our screen here. She has officially joined the army, though. I'll be talking about her when we get to the chapter itself. And I think that's pretty much fine. Now, let's do award experience first, because I'm going to be giving Mist a lot of this. I want Mist promoting right now. Speaking of promotions, I'm actually going to need to use Master Seals on Boyd and Oscar now if I want a base conversation in the next chapter, so that's when I'll do it. Don't want to forget that. It is a bit of a waste of Master Seals, but I'm doing it just to show the dialogue. I promised I would, after all. I had another playthrough where I actually did use both of them. So for now, just leveling up Mist a lot. Magic's always good, because it means more range for physics staves. And normally I would just Master Seal her now, but I need to spend the extra bonus experience. So it's time for Mist to magically get a horse out of nowhere. Also, her outfit changes a lot, but her portrait doesn't. Which, I don't know, I feel like Mist probably should have got a portrait change, considering how important she is, but... I mean, she did get demoted from being the game's secondary lord, also I'm committing an unforgivable crime by talking over this song. So, Mist is now Valkyrie. And, unfortunately, her weapon of choice as a Valkyrie is swords. She just started a D, though, not an E, but with 8 strength as a 21 Valkyrie, that's a bit meh. Sometimes I like giving her a sword just because, but most of the time I'm fine with her just having staves. I don't think I'll need Restore in this chapter, though. I don't think there are any status users, so I might as well give her a sword. That's going to weigh her down a lot, though. It's going to weigh her down even more. But I guess. And she'll automatically equip that, since it's the only offensive weapon she has. But yeah, Mist is on a horse, and that gives her 8 movement, and some pretty decent stats in magic and stuff. Mainly is the fact that she's a mounted healer and has Kanto. That's the most useful thing about her promotion. And now, skills. There's one skill that I really want to assign here. Yes, since Ike's promoted, he now has access to his occult skill, and it's Ether, as you've probably guessed. Ether in this game is actually a lot better than it is in many other Fire Emblems, so it works the exact same way. It turns one attack into 2 attacks, the first which works like Soul, and so restores as much HP as damage it deals, and the second works like Luna, so calculates damage at half the enemy's defense. In this game, it's skill percent, not skill over 2%, so it's actually pretty strong. And it's by far the most useful occult skill in the game, so if you're going to be using any occults, you probably want to save one of them for Ike. However, I should just mention, there is one combo that might be better on Ike in the long run, and that's Adept and Wrath. And in the final chapter, you don't get the Resolve Scroll until chapter 27, so you can't really use it until then, but for the final boss, generally considered to be the best possible combination for Ike is Wrath Resolve, not Ether. But Ether is the skill the game really wanted to use, it looks really cool, and it's still decent. I'm going to use this mostly for story purposes. It does take up most of his capacity, but that's fine. So Ike now has his canonical ultimate skill. And speaking of ultimate skills, we've got some useful ones here. I'm going to go ahead and... I think I might actually give Jill Guard, or... I'm going to actually... Yeah, I'm going to give her Adept. And I might as well give her Guard as well. Like, let me check. The only other one I'd probably want to give Guard is maybe Soren, but yeah, I don't think he'll use it all that well. Also, by the way, with an occult scroll, Mist can learn Soul. So yeah, it's really not that good on Mist, but it's something. In fact, I've never actually seen what her Soul animation looks like. I might want to save this occult and just use that just because... Now, I won't be doing a video on the occult skills until we get to after chapter 19, because there's a class that's a bit of a spoiler for that, but anyway. Also, Stun, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but Stun is not a very good skill. I've seen forum posts that describe it as, when I'm attacking enemies, I want to kill them, not immobilize them. So, yeah. It's really just an insurance in case you don't kill something, but considering how powerful Jill and Marsha are, it's not really that necessary. You know what? I'll give Guard to you. And that's everything for skills. So support conversations, there aren't that many that I can afford to do at this point. However, I do have Stefan and Mordecai. I am planning on getting Stefan and Soren to a B, but because Mordecai hasn't really got any other supports in this playthrough, I can afford to do Stefan and Mordecai's. This is a very short support, though. It becomes a bit more interesting in the B support. Call back to their recruitment. Don't know if Stefan has ever been to Gallia. Like I said, this gets a little bit more interesting in the B support, where Mordecai does find out what both of those words mean, and he's not happy at Stefan after he does. But yeah, I'm pretty sure many people would share Stefan's opinion about detesting Benyon, though. But Stefan has a very interesting backstory and character in general. His supports with Soren are also very interesting. Now, this conversation is interesting for having an importance rating of 2 stars. You'll see why it does at the end of it. Ike finally has to get used to commanding an entire army, not just his own group of mercenaries. So, Tanith is not just a playable character, she commands an entire squad of Pegasus Knights, and the gameplay actually reflects this. This is hinting at a certain mechanic that's exclusive to her that we'll be seeing in the next chapter. Yeah, let's just pawn off the responsibility to someone else. So, this has a rating of 2 stars, which means it's gameplay advice. Like I said, we'll be going into this once we get to the chapter itself. Also, speaking of Tanith, here she is. This conversation's not really about her, though. This conversation is pretty interesting. You're probably lucky you haven't fought him. But here's a bit of information on what we know about Ashnard. So, a year before Ike was born, given Ike's official age. So, Ashnard was never considered for the throne, and then suddenly a plague sweeps through Dayan that just happens to kill every other royal except him. Raise your hands if you think that was a coincidence. I didn't think so. I find this conversation interesting though, because in a way it makes Ashnard a dark mirror for Fire Emblem protagonists. He was a prince who was a one-man army on the battlefield, more than a match for an entire army of enemy troops. It's kind of interesting to me. So, a bit of backstory on our main antagonist there. And see, like I said before, Maureen really only shows up alongside Tormod most of the time. And this conversation's mostly justifying why these two are still with you, because their whole deal was the Laguz emancipation, and we've pretty much dealt with that issue, so... Well, not yet, but they're on the way to changing completely. This is a nice conversation. So that's all for the info. Oh yeah, one thing that I should probably show. In the forge, we can forge throwing weapons now. So hand axes and javelins. That's obviously very useful. Can't forge silver weapons yet, that's not for a very long time, but we can forge javelins and hand axes. Might want to make use of that at some point. In fact, at this point, feel free to spend as much gold as you want. You get a lot in Chapter 19. Yeah, if you thought the money that we have now is a lot, just wait until we get to Chapter 19. I wonder if I should forge this. The issue is that would mean that Jill gets 2 forge weapons, which is a bit of overkill. Or I could forge a sword for Ike, but he doesn't really need it from most of my experience. I'll probably do one of these later anyway, so I might as well. It's pretty cheap to forge these as well. Don't even need to forge the weight down, because I'm sure most of us have above 13 strength by now. Okay, what to call this? Okay, I already used this name in one of my other playthroughs, but this will be the first time you're seeing this on camera. I've got to pay tribute to the best axe blade ever, who, by the way, everyone's going to be really jealous of me when I say this, but Zenobia was the second rare blade I ever got. I had no idea she was that rare. I got her on Rex. Yeah, she was pretty quick. My first was Cora, but yeah, my second was her, which, again, people are going to kill me for saying that. But that actually made some fights later in the game that... I actually need to save now, by the way, to show something. It actually made some fights in the end of the game that many people consider that one boss an absolute joke for me. Zenobia just two-shotted them. It was ridiculous. Okay, I almost forgot to do this, but... And for this, you actually have to choose bows, if you want the base conversation in the next chapter. Meanwhile... Wow, these stats are gonna look terrible. But if you want to see what Boyd looks like as a warrior, here it is. This strength should not be this low. That is just the worst strength on a level 1 warrior ever. That's pretty much worse than most generic enemy warriors, and that's saying something. I wasn't even over-leveled, either. I don't think we've heard this song before. It's kind of weird music for talking about planning a surprise attack. Yeah, unfortunately, Alincia is restricted to being the good luck charm at this point. I wish she actually fought at this point, but she does not. Yeah, it's pretty much the exact same thing we've been doing this whole game. Before we begin, though, we have something to deal with. Thankfully, Tibar managed to catch up with us before we started the attack. Thankfully, Ike rescued Leanne back in Chapter 17, now Reyson owes us a debt. And Reyson owing us a debt is a very, very good thing. Remember when I said many chapters ago that later on we wouldn't be getting a dancer, but we'd be getting something even better? That's Reyson. And here is the dumbest decision in the entire game. You have the option to refuse this. Refusing does get you something, but it's really not worth it. What you give up by saying no is just stupid. I will be covering this option in an alternate save file, just to rant about how terrible it is. Yes, welcome, Reyson. And it's not just Reyson we're welcoming. We get Janeth and Ulki too. Our first official bird tribe allies. Well, thankfully Reyson has a friend like Tibarn, who hasn't backstabbed him. Well, that's good to know. However, he's not going to be doing that for a long time, because the game would be too easy if he joined us right now. So now it's finally time to move out. And Ike was the one saying back in Chapter 12 that the Hawks of Phoenicis were terrible people, even though we'd never met them. So he's come a long way since then. And by really get started, I mean I need to do 4 bios now. So, not only do we have Reyson, Janeth, and Ulki, we also have Tanith. And Tanith is someone who I will be deploying in this map, because she is useful for a few reasons. She's actually very good, but she also has this very unique skill. Yes, an actually good pre-promote again! Tanith is actually really good for a variety of reasons. Despite joining promoted and at a pretty high level, Tanith has very solid base stats, and good growths to back them up, especially, holy crap, that skill growth. While she won't be quite as strong as Marsha, Tanith is still very powerful both now and right up until the end of the game, and will make an amazing secondary flyer with Marsha, or even Jill, or heck, she can even work well as a primary flyer. Tanith is just great all round. Oh, and she's a great support partner due to her Earth affinity. In fact, she's Oscar's second Earth support partner that I mentioned earlier, so having an A with Ike and a B with Tanith gives Oscar plus 50 to his evasion, which is insane. But what makes Tanith really unique is her starting skill. It's completely unique to her, and even if anyone could learn it via a scroll, I don't think the game would let them use it. Tanith's skill lets her call from reinforcements from the Bednion Holy Guard. Yes, reinforcements on the player's side in a Fire Emblem game. I never thought I'd see the day. These reinforcements consist of 2 Pegasus Knights and a Falcon Knight. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why the heck would I want to summon NPCs in a Fire Emblem chapter? Well, Tanith's reinforcements are actually pretty useful for a few reasons. Firstly, they're yellow units, so you can have Ike direct them where you want them to go. Secondly, they're completely expendable, so they make for great lures. Also, the Falcon Knight is actually surprisingly powerful. At base, the Falcon Knight's actually stronger than Tanith most of the time, but as you go through the game, it's going to be less and less useful. The 2 Pegasus Knights, on the other hand, they pretty much suck. They're only really good for luring. Tanith can also summon this squad of reinforcements twice per chapter, so you have 6 expendable units to use. That sounds pretty cruel, but anyway. Tanith's reinforcements are surprisingly useful, and they make her very unique to have on the battlefield. One downside though is this skill does take up 15 of her skill capacity, which means there's not much room for other things like Savior or Adept or Wrath. If you want, you can remove it and give Tanith skills to make her better offensively, but remember you'll never be able to teach it back. It's a unique asset for Tanith, and I like keeping it on for that reason. For all of these reasons, Tanith is probably my favourite pre-promoted Falcon Knight in the series. We also have Reyson, who's incredibly useful, and from this point on, I'll be using him in every chapter. Reyson is very, very unique, and even though he can't fight, he is one of the most useful characters in this game, bar none. No matter what team you're using, I would highly recommend having Reyson on your team from now until the very end of the game. How Reyson works is, he's essentially the dancer of this game. If adjacent to an ally, he can use his Canto skill to allow them to move a second time in one turn. As you'd imagine, having one character able to carry out 2 full movements and 2 full attacks is invaluable and has so many potential uses. It would take way too long to list them all here. But Reyson is even better than your typical dancer for a few reasons. One of them is his other skill, Blessing. This is actually the occult skill for herons, believe it or not. And since Reyson is the only heron you ever get, you don't need to worry about using an occult to learn this. What does Blessing do? It's pretty simple. At the start of every turn, all allies adjacent to Reyson recover HP equal to his magic stats. So this means Reyson gaining magic on level ups actually helps. This skill is pretty useful for keeping your army healthy. Your staff users can't be everywhere after all, and it's not hard to make use of it, seeing as you want a lot of people close to Reyson anyway. But wait, you may be wondering, isn't Reyson a Laguz? But he can't fight. What's the point of him transforming other than healing a little bit more with Blessing? Well, that's the real reason why Reyson is probably the best dancer type unit in the series. Because when he transforms, his Canto skill gets even more powerful. It affects everyone adjacent to him. This means he can refresh the movement of not just 1, but up to 4 characters in one turn. That's 4 people who get to move and attack twice, potentially. There are no words to describe how good that is. Especially due to the way cavalry work in this game. They can attack an enemy and easily use their leftover movement to get into a good position for Reyson to Canto 4 people. The one downside is that Reyson takes a little while to transform. Laguz stones do work on him, but unfortunately the Demi-Band does not. Nice try. Reyson does have a few slight downsides. His movement in human form is a little low, but it gets a lot better when he transforms. But speaking of his transformation, he counts as a flyer in heron form, and so he really needs to watch out for archers or ballistas. Especially since he's so fragile. I've waited until now to talk about Reyson's stats because they don't matter all that much, but his low defense is a bit of a problem. He is a really good magical tank with his resistance stats, but he tends to face physical enemies more often than not, and you really don't want him getting hit by those. Because you really, really don't want to lose Reyson. He's just so useful to have around. One final thing that I find amusing about Reyson's stats, he's actually practically guaranteed to max out skill, despite the fact the stat is pretty much useless to him. I think the only use it has is if you give him counter, but you don't want Reyson getting attacked anyway, so counter's a bad idea, and counter sucks in this game anyway. But yeah, it's still strange that Reyson has such a high skill stat. And we get 2 bird tribe allies, Janeth. Janeth is the first playable hawk that we get. I alluded to this earlier, but compared to ravens, hawks focus a bit more on strength and defense while still having decent speed. Of the 2 hawks that we get now, Janeth tends to be the more useful one, and it's mostly because, like Leth, his transform gauge starts at 16, so he's ready to transform the moment that a map begins. And he has decent strength and speed to start out with, while having a good amount of bulk as well. Janeth, and Ulki, who I'll get to a bit later, is unique in that he possesses a skill that takes up no capacity, is unique to him, and can't be removed. His skill is Insight, which references his role as the Hawk King's eyes. It gives him a flat plus 20 to his accuracy at all times, making Janeth very unlikely to miss. Given that Laguz weapons are very accurate anyway, it's not like Janeth really needed this. Ulki's skill's actually more useful. However, I find Janeth to be the more useful of the 2 overall. Despite that, Janeth's stats aren't really all that great, especially compared to the promoted characters that you probably have at this point, and Tanith, who joins in the same chapter, is a flyer with better overall stats, better weapons, and access to Kanto. Yeah, the strange thing about Bird Tribe Lagoos in this game is they don't have Kanto to start with despite being flyers. They changed that in Radiant Dawn, but here they're a little less mobile. And Ulki. Ulki is meant as a counterpart to Janeth. While Janeth focuses on skill and speed, Ulki focuses more on strength and defense, while being a lot slower. So he's more of the Mighty Glacier Hawk to Janeth's Speedy Hawk, or the Mordecai to Janeth's Leth. He's also like Mordecai in more ways than one, because he starts with a transform gauge of 0, which actually really hinders him. Probably the one good thing I have to say about Ulki is his unique skill. Just like Janeth, this skill has 0 capacity, can't be removed, and is exclusive to him. This is Vigilance, referencing his role as the Hawk King's ears, and it gives a flat plus 20 to evasion at all times. This is a lot more useful than Insight. But in my opinion, it's still not enough to make Ulki all that great. The thing is, even though he's supposed to fill the niche of the stronger, tankier Hawk than Janeth, his strength and defense are barely much more than Janeth, and it comes at a considerable cost of speed. So when you think about it, Janeth has only slightly less power and bulk, a lot more speed, and transforms on the first turn. Apart from Vigilance, there doesn't seem to be all that much reason to use Ulki. I've seen a lot of Path of Radiance tier lists that rank Ulki almost near the bottom of all the characters, and I would kinda have to agree. But don't despair if you like him. In Radiant Dawn, both he and Janeth are a lot better. And with that, I'm going to reload here and show what happens if you refuse Reyson. As a warning, don't try this at home, unless you've made a save file beforehand. You do not want to say no here. But here's what happens if you do. Yeah, you're an idiot to say no to this. This actually does change a few plot scenes later on, because Reyson comments on a few story moments, which he obviously can't if he's not there. And Tiban says this, however, he's skipped the part about Janeth and Ulki. So, if you refuse Reyson, not only do you not get him, one of the most useful characters in the game, you don't get Janeth and Ulki either, so you lose 3 characters. What do you get, though? We get a clan treasure. Treasure in giant air quotes because it's terrible. We get the renewal skill scroll. Now, this is the only way in the game to get the renewal skill scroll. I'm pretty sure this conversation is the exact same. Yeah, there we go. So, the renewal skill scroll. The only way to learn this skill is by refusing Reyson. Renewal restores 10% of the unit's HP at the start of every turn. It's not the best skill anyway, and it's definitely not worth losing Reyson for. And guess what? Losing Reyson, Janeth, and Ulki is actually even worse than you might think, because in Chapter 19, there will be a very, very powerful enemy on the map that if you try and fight them, you will probably get slaughtered. You can convince this enemy to leave the map without fighting them if you have Reyson and either Janeth or Ulki. Refusing Reyson means you'll have to avoid a super powerful, invincible boss in the next chapter. And you'll also miss out on getting an item that requires talking to them. So, let's just run through this. You lose Reyson, which that already is not worth getting a renewal scroll. You lose Janeth and Ulki. You have to fight a super powerful enemy in the next chapter. You lose a very useful accessory that you would have got by talking to this super powerful enemy in the next chapter. And to top it all off, the absolute worst thing about this is that in the Japanese version, this choice was literally pointless. In the English version, the renewal scroll works like any other. You can teach it to anyone when you're at a base, and that's fine. In the Japanese version, renewal was character restricted. Only 2 characters could learn the renewal scroll. Both of these characters already started with renewal, so the skill was completely useless! Sorry, I had to shout that, because why? Why did anyone think letting you refuse Reyson was a good idea, especially in the Japanese version, where your reward is an item that does nothing? I just can't even comprehend what the developers were thinking here. Refusing Reyson has got to be one of the worst decisions you can ever make in any Fire Emblem game. Heck, this is probably one of the most unbalanced binary choices in any game ever. And I have been waiting for so long to rant about it, so I had to get that off my chest. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry I probably burst your eardrums, but yeah. Just to reiterate, in the Japanese version, the only characters who could use the renewal scroll were characters who already started with renewal. And I'll just let that sink in as I end this episode.